Hello, everyone, and I think we're live. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Vimoh Live. This is a podcast that happens on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. and Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. Today is Wednesday, November 9, 2022, and we are here at 9:30 p.m. We have a special guest today, but we only have him for 1 hour, so I will not waste any time giving the intro, and I'll bring him on screen. You all must have heard of him. His name is Dave Farina. He runs a YouTube channel called Professor Dave Explains. We're going to talk to him about science, battling misinformation, and his career as a YouTuber who teaches science. So, without much further ado, here is Dave. Hi, Dave.
Hi, how's it going?
Welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So, what we will do is that, first of all, guys, my health is still not back to completely normal. So, if I cough and sneeze in the middle, please just bear with me. And secondly, Dave, first of all, thank you for doing this. And uh, would you like to start us off with a brief introduction to your career and how you got to doing what you do right now?
Sure. So I was always fascinated with science. In college, I decided to major in chemistry, and then navigated through my 20s. I was actually pursuing music, but all the while was finding that teaching and tutoring chemistry and related subjects was the best way to earn income. And then
Hmm.
I was teaching organic chemistry at a trade university, and I had the idea to start a YouTube channel. I was looking for some passive income to help, sustain me as I was pursuing music. And so I just put my organic chemistry lectures from this university I was teaching at. And so I just started the channel. It was just me talking at the whiteboard, explaining organic chemistry concepts. And then those were received very well, which I was, not necessarily surprised by, but definitely really encouraged by. And so I decided to make more content and then use green screen and animations. And then I just continued through a lot of topics until I realized that this was actually a legitimate and viable career option for me. And so I embraced the role of the science communicator, and for about 7 years now have been voraciously producing educational content for YouTube.
Is this your full time thing now?
Oh yeah, for a while.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
nice. But over time, your content has kind of grown from just being science communication to also battling misinformation.
Sure, which qualifies as science communication. It was a departure from my purely academic tutorial based content. Yes, around 2019, I started producing this other type of content, this debunking content, which became very popular. So I
Yeah.
kept doing it and continue to do it. Yeah.
Do you find the debunking content is more popular than your science content, like regular science
Yes.
content?
I mean, on a video per video basis, absolutely. I mean, the tutorial content is a lot easier to produce, so I produce it in much larger volumes. So
Hmm.
certainly still the majority of my views come from academic content, but that's because I have like, 1,200 academic tutorials versus about 30 debunks. But yes, on an individual video basis, the debunks certainly get more views because they
I
appeal to a broader audience.
Yeah, I can imagine. I ask because we have YouTubers in the Indian subcontinent also who would rather just run a science education channel, but they can't
Hmm.
do so because this shit keeps coming and they find themselves having to respond to it. And then they discover that the responses do better than the actual science education
Yeah.
videos. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a decision that you make. There's nothing wrong with strictly producing academic content. A lot of creators do that, and initially that's all I intended to do. It takes a certain kind of person to jump into the debunking sphere because it's very irritating. I'm inundated on a daily basis, on a minute to minute basis,
Yeah. Yeah.
by thousands and thousands of idiots and trolls and just the worst people. So I'm directly interfacing with awful, terrible people all the time, all day, every day. And that's very annoying. But if you have the thick skin for it, we need more people to be doing this because
Hmm.
pseudoscience is
Yeah.
rampant and science denial is a huge problem in every country and for global civilization as a whole. So if you can stomach it and you have the background for it, please consider getting into the game. Yeah.
Since you mentioned terrible and awful people, what percentage of these people would you say are deliberately dishonest? And what percentage are just people who are gullible and don't know any better?
I mean, it's kind of a spectrum. I mean, there's definitely straight up trolls that are
Hmm.
fake stock accounts that are there's some I don't know what institution is creating these to like propagate false, to try to change the narrative, to try to amplify the effect of some particular narrative or something. Whether it's Putin or I don't know who's doing this. So that is like fake people. And then there are people who are actually well intentioned and fall for the misinformation and actually are genuinely inquisitive. And they'll comment, like, wow, like you're saying this, they're saying that. I'm not sure what to do. Please help me. And so with those people, I can definitely have a softer approach. And then in the middle, there's just varying degrees of just, I mean, the most common thing I get is just brainwashed, willfully ignorant people who straight up do not watch the video that they're commenting on. I make an hour long surgical debunk of everything this charlatan has ever said. And then they just go, oh, ad hominem, and you're not qualified, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, where am I wrong? Where am I?
You,
Name one place where
you,
I'm wrong. Timestamp and
yeah.
explanation. They never reply to it. So,
I did see one response of yours where you clarify, where you even had to clarify that you had not actually done ad hominem because there was no argument. Just calling someone stupid is not ad hominem
I've,
unless you are
I've,
using stupid as an argument.
Yes, you're wrong
Yeah,
because you're stupid, ad
yeah,
hominem. You're wrong and you're stupid, and here's why
is
you're
not ad
wrong,
hominem.
not an ad
Yeah,
hominem. I've never, ever seen someone use ad hominem correctly,
correct. Yeah,
ever. The only people who use it are idiots who don't know what it means, and they're just whining about you insulting
yeah.
them, and they
I,
deserve
I
to be
complain a lot
insulted.
about
So,
how I complain a lot about how even like among our community, skeptic community, there's a general misunderstanding of where to apply a logical fallacy and
yeah.
where not to. People just randomly use them as throwaway phrases.
Yeah, it's something that you say, like flat earthers do this all the time. They just list random logical fallacies as though that is a rebuttal to anything.
Hmm.
Just ad hominem argument from authority. No, it's none of those. I just proved that you are wrong using logic a toddler could understand, and you have nothing to say. That's why you're complaining about fallacies. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of your most successful videos has been about Deepak Chopra and the quantum quackery stuff.
hmm
So, since that is actually the kind of superstition we in India have to go up against the most.
yeah,
And by the way, and before I go any further, apologies for Deepak Chopra. We did not like, I was not consulted before he was
sure.
sent there.
Hey, America has its fair share of charlatans, so I don't hold it against you.
So, generally speaking, if I had to ask you a simple, straightforward question about this, we get various versions of this thing that the universe is consciousness. What is the
hmm
strongest rebuttal to this? Like, for example, we got callers some weeks ago who said that when we are observing matter, matter is matter. But when we are not observing matter, matter is something else. It's in another state, apparently. It changes
hmm
states based on whether it is being looked at.
hmm
So, just to disprove that one point, what possible evidence could we give?
Well, I mean, you don't need any evidence. It's a baseless assertion. I mean, Hitchens would say that which can be asserted without evidence can be rejected without evidence, right? It's a
Hmm.
baseless assertion. Now, it's a valid, like, philosophical musing or a philosophical speculation. You can speculate, oh, maybe consciousness is fundamental or something like that. But that's not what they do. They say that physics specifically proves it or demonstrates it in some way. That's a lie. There's nothing in physics, there's nothing in modern physics that dictates that consciousness creates reality. And they will simply point to experiments in an incorrect manner. They'll point to the double
Hmm.
slit experiment or other, landmark experiments in physics and claim that those experiments provide evidence for the idea that consciousness creates reality. They don't. So I push back against that. If you want to
Hmm.
just like, oh, what if this, I'm speculating, speculate all you want. I
Yeah.
can't prove you wrong, but when you try to misrepresent science to substantiate that kind of a claim, you're wrong, and then I have something to
Yeah.
say because you're misrepresenting the status
And
of
you're
physics. So,
spreading misinformation that may
yeah,
potentially be dangerous also. Cool.
sure, yeah.
Yeah. So the more common kind of argument or critic that you would go up against possibly would be the American variety of creationist.
That's one of them. I go.
Yeah.
I have a lot of battles that I enter, but that's one of one of the main ones. Yes,
Do you
creationism and
regret? Do you regret finding yourself in the middle of the flat Earth battle?
Yeah, well, that was what got me into it. I mean, I never. That's what got me started in the debunking. Is that I made I like to make series on academic subjects, and I was doing an astronomy series. So it was
Hmm.
like 30 something tutorials on astronomy, just basically astronomy 101. What I learned in astronomy 101 as an undergrad, very basic information. Just went all the way through it. And then at the end, for a little bit of spice, I made a video debunking astrology, which I thought would be very controversial. It wasn't. People
Hmm.
didn't really seem to care about it. And then I made another video. I had heard that some people think the earth is flat. So I made a video about how we know it's not. I didn't look into what they say at all. I didn't look into any of their talking points. I just went, that's dumb. We know it's round. Here's how, in like a historical context, in an
Yeah.
epistemological context. And then these idiots, the Globebusters, were like, "Oh, we're gonna tear apart your video," and they made a 3-hour live stream just full of stupidity, and they were very, very, very rude to me. If they weren't, I have to thank them, because if they weren't so rude to me, I probably would have gone like, "Oh, that's dumb. Okay, well, on with my life like a normal
Yeah, that
person."
happens. Sometimes like you're unmotivated to make a video and somebody is insulting to you and you get motivated towards making
I'm very
something.
vindictive. Honestly, I owe them a round of beers, because I've made so much money off of that video. But and it
Yeah,
also
I can
got me
imagine.
into the debunking game, which is
Hmm.
now a part of my career. But I chopped it up. I chopped their dumb live stream up into like a 45-minute Citizen Kane of debunking with their stupidity, and it's just people. I still get like 10 to 20,000 views a day, every single day, on that video.
Yeah.
It's totally unexplainable, but to me. But anyway, that then I did some more flat Earth. But then I thought, all right, let's see. Like, this is stupid. Let's see what's more relevant. So anti-vax, other medical stuff. This quantum mysticism stuff. Creationism. I really want to tackle science denial, the versions that are more prevalent and more harmful. So
Hmm.
it was a stepping stone, I suppose.
So there are also evolution deniers, right? People
Yeah.
who think that, like, our friend Sciences Dope made a video about it a couple of days ago. But the general refrain is that evolution has not been proven with 100% certainty.
Uh-huh. Well, so that's a
So,
that's a non-starter,
yeah.
because that just demonstrates. I mean, science does not prove anything ever. That's not
Hmm.
what science does. Science can disprove things, but science puts forward models that correlate data and make predictions. And the more that the predictions are validated and verified, the stronger that model becomes, and the more it must therefore correlate with reality. But scientists don't use the word prove, right? From a layperson perspective, yes, evolution has been proven. In a strictly epistemological sense, no, we don't use that word in science. So it's just,
Hmm.
when people talk about prove, and then I'll say it's just a theory, it's just a theory. All right, you're disqualified from adult conversation regarding science. You don't know what science is or how it works. You don't know what a theory is. You don't understand that a theory is the highest possible construct in science. It's the most powerful construct. It explains laws. It's not subordinate to laws.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, evolution is observed every single day. We've observed speciation events. I mean, there's nobody credible in the scientific community operating anywhere tangential to the biological sciences that does not operate under the framework of evolution. End of
Hmm.
story. And so you
Yeah.
have these handful of clowns at the Discovery Institute and similar propaganda mills that their whole new thing is to, like, they're the polar opposite of like a Kent Hovind or somebody who just pretends science is wrong. They're trying to dress up their lies as actual science, as a challenge, right? A competing model, versus they call it Darwinism, but what they mean is evolutionary biology. And
They somehow always manage to skip everything that has happened since Darwin till
right,
now.
yeah.
So they make it appear as if modern creationism is fighting ancient Darwinism.
Yes, exactly. In
Yeah.
fact, I just released a debunk last week on one of these guys at the DI, and they keep pushing this Darwinism thing. I debunked it in another video, and then one of them
Yeah, I saw that.
retaliated, and I had to
Yeah.
reiterate again. Origin of Species is over 150 years old. So much has happened since then. Pretending that Origin of Species is the only book you need to understand modern evolutionary biology is like pretending you can understand quantum mechanics by reading Newton's Principia. It's insane.
Yeah.
They will never stop. They've been called out by everybody. prominent evolutionary biologists write papers saying, don't call it Darwinism. That doesn't mean anything. And they just keep doing it because they can't give it up, because it's too good, right? If you're a Christian, if you're a fundamentalist Christian, and you see two competing paradigms, what you want to believe is that it's a prophet. You've got Jesus and you've
Yeah,
got
yeah,
Darwin, and they're prophets, and they each have a Bible. There's the Bible and there's Origin of Species. So prophet versus prophet, Bible versus Bible. I'm going to pick the one that I like,
yeah.
rather than an entire field of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of biologists and anthropologists and paleontologists and all these things, all working on science that's evolving, and ironically,
And
and
one thing that I also noticed that uh, they always frame the discussion as evolution versus God. But the point is that even if you manage to prove that all of evolution is wrong, it will not prove that God exists,
right, yeah,
right?
and forget the fact that most rational religious people believe in a God that is compatible with science, right?
Yeah,
Most
exactly.
religious
Yeah,
people, I'm an atheist, but I have no problem with deists that are, relatively secular, that simply believe in a God, and
yeah.
then science is the process of discovering the mind of God, right?
Whatever God created. Yeah.
Sure. And I don't believe that, but I have no problem with it. It's just,
Hmm.
I don't have a problem with that. And so, that's not the issue. It's funny, like they whine about me pointing out how religious they are, but then in all of their hit pieces on me, they go, atheist YouTuber, atheist. And it's like, you see how hypocritical you guys are.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like, it's not an attack on religion. It's an attack
Hmm.
on the pseudoscience that they push.
Yeah.
End of
Like
story.
one of those things, like one of the gaps where, at least in the evolutionary framework, they try to shove God into is that they say life cannot come from non life, which takes
Hmm.
us towards abiogenesis.
Yeah.
So, what is the most current understanding of the origin of life? Evolution is settled, but
Hmm.
what is our most current, best possible guess about how life might have started?
How much time you got? See, that's
Can
the
you
problem.
say it in 5 minutes?
I can give you the super brief version. And
Okay.
so this is a problem with origin of life research. It's way more sophisticated and way more nuanced. You have to understand molecular biology. Evolution,
Hmm.
you can kind of wrap your head around as like a freshman in high school, but this
Yeah.
stuff you need some understanding of biochemistry, molecular biology. So we're understanding that there's sort of a physico-chemical continuum between sets of molecules and actual living systems, and so the main straw man that creationists put forward is that if life can arise from non-life, you should be able to make it in a lab, right?
Yeah.
And so their idea is that, well, if molecules can be life, then you should be able to take some molecules and go like this, and boom, it's life. You should be able to do it in a lab. It's a complete straw man. That's a field called synthetic biology, and it's very promising. And we actually probably will synthesize some kind of rudimentary life within the 21st century, but it's not going to look anything like the process by which it happened on Earth, because what happened
Hmm.
is there's this entire field of systems chemistry which looks at these complex sets of molecules and how autocatalysis can emerge, by which molecules can catalyze the synthesis of other molecules as well as themselves. So excuse me, certainly an RNA first world seems to be pretty much universally agreed upon, because RNA has demonstrated these autocatalytic properties. So first you have to start with small molecules, very very small molecules, that are shown by spectroscopy to be completely abundant in the universe. They're everywhere. So we've got these small
Hmm.
building blocks. And then there are catalytic methods by which these can polymerize. So the biomolecules, most of them are polymers. So you've got amino acids that make a chain, or you've got nucleotides that make a chain. And so a lot of research has been done towards showing how sort of mineral surfaces can catalyze these polymerization reactions. So whatever it was, wherever this whatever this setting was, probably hot springs is the most likely candidate. There's other competing hypotheses like mineral tidal
Hmm.
pools and deep sea hydrothermal vents. The hot spring one seems to be winning. And so you've got a mineral surface. You've got an environment rich with minerals that can catalyze, but in this like heterogeneous fashion, some polymerization. So you get RNA, right? And so this has definitely been demonstrated. Nucleotides spontaneously polymerizing to get RNA. And then
Hmm.
separately, other researchers have shown that RNA can have autocatalytic properties. So RNA molecules can synthesize other molecules like proteins, as well as RNA molecules, and then also themselves. So there are molecules that can self-propagate. So this is
Nice.
sort of the beginning of the idea of replication, right? We need some kind of replicative process. But then
Hmm.
the way that systems chemistry is very important is that it is not the case that just all of a sudden we had a system that was life. You had RNA molecules that were catalyzing the formation of other molecules, which then in turn, such as proteins, were catalyzing the formation of other molecules. And it's this dance of molecules begetting other molecules for thousands and millions of years, right? You have
Of years.
millions of years of different biomolecules in vesicles, right? They're just enclosed in little vesicles. They could have been lipid monolayers. We're not sure exactly, but you have this going for millions of years until suddenly you have a system, right? The suites of molecules can by chance emerge metabolic properties, and then the metabolic functions can improve over time, and then you have other, and then eventually you have proteins that can catalyze the formation of DNA, right? All these things. So
Hmm.
if you were watching back then in like a sped up time lapse and you see all these complex systems of molecules enclosed in vesicles, you'd be really hard pressed to look at these self-replicating systems of molecules and go, okay, that's life, right? It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's this spectrum
Yeah.
where you definitely have molecules that you have a vesicle and you have self-replication, but it's not complex enough in terms of metabolism to call it a living system. But then over here, you get to something that's vaguely resembling a very primitive version of a bacterium, much simpler than a modern bacterium, but something kind of like that. That's
Kind of
clearly
like.
life because we've got metabolism. It's undergoing binary fission, it's splitting, etc. But in the middle, where is that point where life is? I mean, you can't really say. But
Hmm.
anyway, in terms of the
Yeah.
status of origin of life research, we know a lot. We have all of these potential pathways. We may never know exactly precisely what happened in which sequence, but in terms of the potentiality, it's really not much of a stretch. We understand a lot. It's not that hard to
Yeah.
wrap
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
head around how systems of
I
molecules
regret
can
asking that
produce this.
question actually.
Mhm. You regret it?
No,
Sorry.
because some people, no, not because of that. I
Yeah.
understood most of what you said, but I understand that this is only going to leave everyone wanting more. And some people in the chat are saying that they would like a much longer video
Well,
on what we know about abiogenesis
sure.
right now.
So that's the great thing about debunking. So James Tour is this guy who just rages against origin of life research. It's all nonsense. And surprise, surprise, he's a Jesus freak. So he has this diatribe where he just disparages origin of life research. So I made a video on him that was pretty innocuous, and then he made a 14-part series on how dumb I am, and that was full of lies and
I saw
misrepresentations of
that.
science. So
Yeah.
then I made a 2-part, very long, 2.5-hour thing. And if you want to understand, if you want a glimpse into the current status of origin of life research, definitely watch that 2-part series, because in exposing all of his lies and all his quote mines, I show a lot of research, 50 plus papers. I actually have interviews with prominent researchers in the field. Lee Cronin, Stephen Benner is a titan in that field. So I physically interview them, and then I show all these papers and really walk you through kind of the current status of origin of life research. A lot of people will comment and go, wow, I had no idea that this
Hmm.
field was so sophisticated and how much we know and how much we've
Yeah, because
demonstrated in the lab,
when you hear from religious people, rather creationists, that life cannot come from life, they say it with such finality that even to
Yeah.
get one sentence in response, you will have to know at least 50% of what you just tried to explain,
Yeah.
right?
And they
So it's
certainly don't.
they
Yeah.
take advantage of the fact that this area is so complicated that the even beginning to answer that question would take a lot of education. So
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, life can't come from non-life. Well, here we are. So yes, it
Yeah,
can.
I
Right.
actually saw Matt
We're here.
Dillonty answer this in a very clever way. He was talking to someone and they said that life cannot come from life. He said, "Okay, so answer me this: when the universe began, was there life in it? No. Is there life in it now? Yes. So life came from non-life.
Hmm.
So for those of us who can't actually wrap our heads around abiogenesis, that actually does.
But
But let me ask.
let me
Go
just
on.
piggyback one more thing on this. People who are
Yeah.
so desperate to believe in that version of God, they believe in an inferior God. They believe in a God that made the universe and then sat around for a long time and went,
Yeah.
nothing interesting is happening. Let me nudge this molecule onto this molecule. Let me see what I can do. It's a pathetic loser God. Why don't you believe in an incredible God with such a brilliant mind that he can architect a universe that and just go boom, and then it starts, and all the laws inherent in the universe are such that life can emerge spontaneously? Why don't you
Yeah.
believe in that God? It's a much better God.
That's
Sorry,
a
that
good
was
point.
a tangent, but yeah.
No, good point. My next question has to do with naturalism itself as a worldview.
Hmm.
You have said on occasion that you are a naturalist. What do you mean by it?
Oh,
You
okay,
have,
yeah.
right?
I was
Or have I
thinking of
got
two
you?
different contexts. Naturalism is also kind of the romantic idea that nature is
No, no,
healing.
no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, no,
No,
no,
you
not
mean
that.
yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Identify with the notion that nature is all there is. There's nothing supernatural. Yes.
Hmm. So naturalism, according to you, would be the view that all that exists is part of nature,
Hmm. Yes.
and if someone wishes to shove a supernatural belief into nature and say it's just simply something we have not understood yet, would you consider that part of naturalism? Would you be sympathetic to that definition of God, let's say?
I mean, I'm sympathetic to it because that's what we've done throughout human history. There was a
Hmm.
time where we knew nothing, so
Yeah.
everything was God,
Hmm.
right? How do you make it rain? You pray to the rain god. What's lightning? It's Zeus in the clouds. What's disease? It's spirits. It's all everything was supernatural. And then we slowly started figuring things out. And so it doesn't take that much foresight to extend that trend and just
Hmm.
understand that we are slowly replacing supernatural explanations with real ones, with real natural ones, as we figure
Yeah.
out the universe around us. So that to me is a very obvious conclusion that everyone ought to be able to have the mental faculties to arrive at. Um, so the problem is the status of 21st century science. We know so much. There's really almost nowhere that the God of the Gaps has left to live. And in fact, origin of life research as of the past 10, 15 years has become so sophisticated that there's not even really any room for the God of the Gaps there either. The only room where the God of the Gaps fits is literally the initial singularity, right? How did the
Yeah.
universe begin? Believe it or
Yeah.
not, we actually have some science around that too, but it's
Yeah.
largely speculative.
Largely speculative.
So if you want to go, I believe in a God that went boom, I'm starting the universe now. Fine, not a problem with me.
Hmm.
But that's the only place left,
But then
right?
that will have to be demonstrable, right? Somehow.
Um, well, no,
Like
not necessarily.
we don't have any way to demonstrate what could have caused the beginning of the universe. So
Well,
why
maybe
reach
we
any
will
kind of.
one day.
Yeah,
Maybe,
maybe we will. Okay,
yeah.
so acha, you're talking about in that context. If you want to
Yeah.
fit God in that context in naturalism. Okay.
Yeah, but also it's not a problem for me if you believe it in the context of a religious belief. If you have a
Hmm.
spiritual and religious belief in that kind of God, right? The problem is when you start pretending that science validates it. It doesn't. There's
Yeah.
nothing in
Yeah,
science
yeah,
that
yeah.
points to that. It's just something we don't know yet. Just like we used to not know what lightning was and thought it was Zeus. It's not,
Hmm.
right? So cosmology is a vibrant field and will continue to grow. And maybe at some point we will have a naturalistic explanation for that too. But the problem is everyone just has a freaking, has an aneurysm and goes, you can't get something from nothing. You can't get something from nothing. Well, look, where does your God come from? All right. You have a
Hmm.
problem with the universe existing without cause. So to solve that, you've invented an infinitely more complex deity who somehow exists without cause. And you
Yeah.
can't understand that that's a contradictory position to hold
Oh,
because you're not
they have
thinking about it.
workarounds. They have workarounds to go around that. There are a whole lot of like the entire
And none of
discipline
them
of
are good.
theology. Sorry.
And none of them are good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
theology.
Hmm.
Uh, so this particular question actually is kind of like on my list, but several people in the chat have also raised it. And like, you use the internet for disseminating information and for fighting misinformation, right?
Yeah.
So the internet is also the reason why so much misinformation spreads,
Yeah.
right? So one question that Taranga had here, which is on screen, how much does pseudoscience have to do with political beliefs and voting, in particular in the USA? And
I
my
think.
question in general associated with that
Yep.
was that, do you consider the internet a net positive or a net negative?
Very good question. So the first question first, I mean, it definitely correlates. It definitely correlates because where your politics lie informs which media you consume, and some media are more inherently propagandistic than others. And so I'm not going to pretend to absolve liberals completely from falling for
Hmm.
pseudoscience, because there are certain brands of pseudoscience that liberals really easily fall for, which are typically anti-corporate, so like anti-pharma and anti-modern medicine pseudoscience. There's a lot of liberals, like anti-vax is the one that spans the gamut. It's on the
Hmm.
right and the left. There's a
And the
lot of
left.
anti-vax on both sides, but the right is far and away the much more science denying side. Um, it's denial of climate change. It's denial of, I mean, it's just blanket science denial, um, to suit political purposes. So there is certainly a correlation, but it's not like only one side is denying science. There's definitely science denial on both sides, and I deal with a lot of liberals that fall for quantum mysticism and
Oh yeah.
this kind of stuff. So it's everywhere. In terms of the internet, I am a naive optimist, and I do believe the internet is a net positive. And I want to believe that we are, like, if you zoom way out on a timeline of human history from the Paleolithic era to 3000 CE, and you were living in 3000 CE, and you went, wow, in the 1980s the internet was invented. So there was no internet, and then there was internet, and for about 50 years it was pretty weird as we adjusted to this
Yeah.
concept of the totality of human knowledge being accessible to every single person on earth in every remote corner of the earth, save certain underdeveloped areas. And it took humanity a little while to figure out how to interface with information and how to figure out what's true. But then we figured it out, and now we're golden. So I'm trying to think of it that way, and I kind of genuinely believe that. I think a little bit is just blind optimism and
Hmm.
faith and deluding myself, but I also do believe that. So that's where I stand. I don't have too much to substantiate that, other than the fact that I do think we're making progress in terms of figuring out how to filter out disinformation, how to
Hmm.
target charlatans, how to expose them, how to do that kind of thing. But that's why I take my job very, very seriously. I do think it is the biggest problem in the world. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay. So we are now at the half an hour mark, and we have Dave with us for like 30 more minutes, less than 30 more minutes. In fact, we have him for 25 minutes, in fact. So let me ask you, if you have anything to say about free will, does it exist?
That's a good one.
I
I don't,
ask because I have
yeah,
never managed to make up my mind about it.
I can't. Yeah, I don't know. I think so. I think so. And you can
You
come
think free
at
will
it from,
exists?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, but I don't
No, but
know.
there is. I have heard about physicists saying that the universe is deterministic, and that rules out any kind of free will.
But it's not, though. On the
Mm-hmm.
fundamental level, it's non-deterministic, right?
Hmm.
The brain is governed by electrical impulses, and electrons are quantum particles.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know enough about quantum physics to
Okay.
validate this in any way. But
Yeah.
that the electron is a quantum particle, I don't know. I mean, there's just something about neural systems. I don't I think that there's room for indeterminism in the way the brain works.
Hmm.
But then again, I don't know. Like you can come at it from a rigidly empirical standpoint, or you can come at it from an experiential standpoint. And when I think of my own experiences, I'm also torn because sometimes I think about major decisions I've made in my life. And I have to acknowledge that I had no free will in those situations. I simply was acknowledging who I am, what my situation is, and what the correct course of action is. There's no decision. It's just
Hmm.
acknowledging the path that I ought to take, be given the information I have.
Yeah.
But then zoom out a little bit. Okay, I lifted my hand. I don't know why I picked up this pen. Like, how is that not free will? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
I suppose, uh, like my position on this has always been some kind of compatibilism, which means that if I don't have free will, I don't have free will. But if I have free will, I have free will. In
mhm.
either case, the workings of my normal life is not affected, and I will continue to act as if I have free will.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and when physicists know any better, I will figure. I'll know also.
Yeah, that's a good way to retain your sanity,
Sanity.
probably. Yeah, and I mean, I mean, you're right. Whether I do or don't have it, I'm going to compart myself in such a way so as to enjoy my life as much as possible and do as much good as possible.
Hmm.
And that's my main concern. But yes, I would like to know if I have free will and if aliens exist and all these other things that I'm very fascinated with. But we'll see
Okay.
how much I can know by my deathbed. Yeah.
I have one more question on my list, and then I'll get to chat questions. But before
Hmm.
that, there's a super chat for 100 rupees by Avinash. Thank you, Avinash. He says evolutionary biologists have identified gossip
Hmm.
as an aid to bonding in large groups.
Sure,
Okay,
that makes sense to me. I mean, I hadn't heard that, but it immediately makes sense to
it
me.
immediately makes sense. Yeah,
Sure.
the more you talk to someone, the closer your bonds, and the more likely they are to die for you and you to die for them.
Yes. Yeah, you're
That sort of
developing
stuff.
emotional connections.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So there was a question by Eman. Hold on. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Ah, here it is. My only problem with the theory of evolution is its social impact, that is, how fast it goes to eugenicist practices, especially when white supremacy is accounted for. What do you think about it, Dave?
But it does not do that. That's a scapegoat, right?
Hmm.
You have totalitarian, uh, sociopathic leaders who will try to use whatever they can to justify their bigotry and their hatred. So you can pretend science supports your bigotry. You can pretend religion supports your bigotry, right? What's the difference between saying we're God's chosen people, so we're going to kill you, versus science says we're the best, so we're going to kill you? They're both lies. You know what I mean? To believe
Hmm.
in a God that says that is stupid, and to believe that science says that is stupid. It certainly doesn't. So we can't control, right, these kind of megalomaniacal people, right? They're misrepresenting science. There's nothing in evolution that points to eugenics, right? We're all the same species.
This
A
actually
little
leads
more
to,
melanin, whatever. Who cares?
do you think science can or does have any kind of position on morally right stuff or morally wrong stuff?
I mean, there's definitely, I mean, you can use evolutionary psychology to discuss morality. I mean, there's a lot of, you can point to studies about how morality develops, from birth through adulthood. You can also look at proto morality in like other simian species, right? There's other primate species that exhibit kinds of morality when they overthrow tyrant leaders and they do these very complex social behaviors. So there's definitely like an anthropological way to talk about morality. But I mean, in the end, morality is what we decide. You know what I mean? We as a society determine what's moral.
What is right?
um
What is wrong? Hmm.
yeah, it's not, there's nothing inherent. So I mean, that really bothers me when people say, God is real, because otherwise where does morality come from? I mean, it's a very, very infantile, like when you pretend that your morality is bestowed upon you from a deity, and the only basis for being morality is your fear of punishment, you're basically admitting that you're stuck in this pre-operational stage of morality, which is what children exhibit, right?
Yeah,
Small
yeah.
children, when you're like a 5-year-old or something,
It's
your concept of morality is what mommy and daddy tell me to do. If I
yeah.
do what mommy and daddy tell me to do, I'm good, and if I don't, I'm bad. That's what you're doing. Is you have a magic sky daddy telling you what to do, and that's the right. I would murder, but I won't because daddy told me not to. Right?
Hmm.
People who exhibit
So
that
for them, the
level of
definition of
morality.
morality, seems to be whatever God says. God
Yeah.
says it's bad, it's bad. If God says
Right.
it's good, it's good.
Right. Which
Even
is
if it's
yeah.
contradictory.
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so that is a very infantile view of morality.
Hold on. Taranga says, please take my second question. Taranga, please retype it. The chat is very long and very crowded today. I'll have some trouble getting back to it. If you can retype your question, I'll take it. But in the meantime, Harsha says, I think, Harsha, thank you for the 400 rupee chat. I think this confusion of science is based on proof comes from school. We study theorems and proofs in mathematics, and because we are learning that language of physics as math, we get confused that proof is the way of science.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, yeah. In math, we can prove things because
Hmm.
math operates in this sort of perfect hypothetical realm, right, where we have axioms that govern everything. And yes, in geometry, you can prove things. In logic, you can prove things. In
Hmm.
science, we don't prove things.
You
And
only
then I
disprove
guess
things.
theorem sounds a little bit like theory, so like maybe that, yeah.
I
So
guess,
that's
yeah.
it's a good point. That is maybe where some people get confused. Yeah.
Okay, I found Taranga's question. It is uh, how is it that a lot of fundamentalist right wing BIPOC is
People of color? What's BI? I don't.
by okay, I got it. By and people of color also get space with rationalist anti right wing space in the USA. Huh.
I don't think I understand the question
Yeah,
completely.
how is it that a lot of fundamentalist right wing by people of color, okay, also get space with the rationalist anti right wing space in the USA?
Let me look up BIPOC because I don't think that we're using it properly. What does it mean?
Maybe.
Um, I can't find it. Hold on. What is the
Um,
meaning of BIPOC? Can I get it? Black, Indigenous, and people of color? Okay, Black,
okay, okay,
Indigenous, and
okay.
people of color.
Why
Um,
so many right wing and religious fundamentalist, black, indigenous, and people of color get space in and with the rationalist and anti right wing people of the USA?
I don't know that they do. I mean, it's like when the right wing gets a black person, they kind of like wave them around like, look, we got a black person.
Yeah, yeah.
We have some, you know. I don't think that it is that common. Like usually, I mean, you know, it's not a secret that I mean, like the left wing, you know, Democrats. I'm not a Democrat, right? And I'm not for the Democratic Party. But to give the Democratic Party over the Republican Party, they at least pretend to be concerned with social issues and civic justice and things like that. Whereas the Republican Party, they don't even pretend. Like they're launching an all-out attack on all things human rights, right? Any kind of justice, they'll just squash it with propaganda, right? You have
Hmm,
Black Lives Matter is such a great example because you have this movement that is born of just black people getting murdered by cops, right? Black people are getting murdered by cops all over the place. And now we have cameras on our phones and it's not a rumor. Here are videos of black people getting murdered by cops all the time. They don't even have guns on them. Some of them are
hmm,
kids. Sometimes they break into in the wrong home and shoot a black person that was just
hmm,
sitting there doing nothing. It's happening all the time. And so Black Lives Matter is this movement that's like, hey, can you stop murdering black people? And then the right wing is just like, it's Antifa, they're terrorists, and they're the it's just like, what are you doing?
yeah,
They're just trying to get to stop black people getting murdered all the time. And the right wing just makes all this propaganda to try to squash any effort towards human rights.
yeah,
So when you get a black person that's on that side or another, you know, any kind of other marginalized race, it's really weird, but it happens sometimes. And then they parade them around like, hey, look, see, we're not all white Nazis. Um, but I don't think it's typical. I mean, the left wing, the Democratic Party is riddled with problems, but at least they're on the surface level kind of going, hey, like human rights are good, right? Women's rights are good, and racism is
Terrible that
bad,
we,
right?
yeah,
You
terrible that
know,
we have to actually say these things these days. Not killing people may be a good thing.
yeah, let's just not murder people, I think is probably good. Yeah.
Okay. Tarang, guys, I'm sorry, we have 15 minutes. I can't take people on screen today. If you have any more questions, you can leave them in the chat and I'll try to bring it up in the 15 minutes that are left. Otherwise, you can always find Dave on his channel and ask him, or social media, etc. Uh, Dave, my next question would be, I do understand there is significant disagreement among mathematicians about this, but what is math? Like,
Uh,
is it a natural thing? It exists that we observed, or is it something we made up?
I mean, it's definitely both. I mean, things exist in number, and
Hmm.
mathematical relationships exist in nature, right? That gravity operates by an inverse square law. That is something that is inherent in the universe. These
Hmm.
mathematical relationships are inherent in the universe, and that's math. But math is also a language that we develop to, I mean, well, not even necessarily to describe those natural things, because math can be done just in the vacuum of this hypothetical math land.
Yeah, hence the
Um,
confusion.
yeah, so math is applied logic is like the
Hmm.
shortest answer that you could
Hmm.
give, because we can build perfect circles and triangles and talk about the relationships between the angles and do all kinds of things, describing objects that technically don't exist, right? There is no
Yeah,
perfect
yeah.
circle or perfect triangle. It's an approximation, but reality is an approximation of this perfect hypothetical world. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not a mathematician. I think there are definitely mathematical relationships inherent in the universe, but also math is a language and a tool that we use to expound on logical principles. I don't know, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So there is a related question from Ana Wazi. It says, if you cannot prove square root of -1 through demonstration, should we believe it to exist just because it is useful? Is this delusional? I guess it depends on the definition of exist, right?
But you can prove it, right? I mean, the square root of -1 is and that has the thing is that shows up in a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
It shows up in equations, like physics equations. So it has that it is needed to describe real phenomena makes me believe it is real.
Hmm.
I is real. The square root of -1 in math language, it's imaginary. I is the quintessential imaginary term. Um,
Okay.
but it has real application. I think it does. It has to, because it's in physics equations. But yeah, this is not my forte. I
No,
did.
got it, got it. No, but
Yeah,
the answer to the question was it is not delusional, and that the square root of one does exist, and the
yeah.
reason we think it exists is because it can be used.
I tapped out at differential equations. I went through. I had to do through multivariable calculus for my chem degree. I took linear algebra just because I wanted to keep going. And then in the first, was taking ordinary diffie-q. And then the first week, I was like, I gotta get out of here. I can't. I can't do. I can't do
Please,
this.
you're talking to a English literature graduate
There you go.
who decided in school that this is not for me.
Hmm.
Right. So there is a question. Like, I have a question also, but I think if I take the sum total of everything you have said today, that kind of. But I'll ask it. Do you think there is anything inherently superior about human beings, or are we just a different kind of animal?
Well, we are a different kind of animal, but we definitely. I mean, we undeniably have a superior intellectual capacity over any other species. I
Hmm.
mean, I think for a long time we downplayed the intelligence of other species, and we are learning how smart other species are, like dolphins and chimps and octopi. And, there's really, really smart animals, but we are smarter. I mean, we certainly are smarter. Um, Look at what we've created. I think it's pretty undeniable. So,
Yeah. But do you think intelligence is something like we think of intelligence as valuable because we have it,
mhm.
right? A bird might find find it completely useless because it has wings,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So, do you think what I'm trying to get at is that do you think we are superior is because we are the only ones passing judgment on ourselves?
I don't think so. I mean, talking about birds and stuff. I mean, like what intelligence bestows us with is the ability to transcend our physical limitations, right? So, for example, we're not supposed to swim, right?
Hmm.
We're not aquatic creatures. But
Hmm.
look at Michael Phelps. Look how fast he swims. That's crazy. It's because our brains are able to rationalize how can I contort my body and how can I manipulate water in the most physically efficient way possible to speed through the water, right? We
Hmm.
can't fly like birds, but guess what? We built planes. We
Hmm.
can fly faster than any bird in the entire world by a lot. So it's like where intelligence is what allows us to create technology, which is what allows us to transcend biology, right? So for millions and millions of years, you just have everything sort of existing as their DNA dictates, and then with the ability to create technology, we're sort of defying the pace of evolution, right? In the limit of eventually modifying our own biology, right? We're already doing, genetic engineering, and then CRISPR. Who knows what's going to happen with CRISPR? And then who knows if we will become some kind of cyborg? I don't know. We're getting very sci-fi here, but this is so much so that there are people who there's a great series of books, Homo sapiens, and then Homo Deus by this guy for Harari,
Yuval
and
Harari. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like it's not that much of a stretch to propose that we are catalyzing the first transition to what arguably must be deemed a new species, um, through processes that are not strictly biological, right? Technologically, we're differentiating ourselves from the Homo sapiens of prehistory, right? If we incorporate all of these things into our bodies and we are manipulating our own genetic code and things of that nature, isn't it justified that we call ourselves Homo Deus and differentiate ourselves from the pure old cavemen? You know,
Hmm.
so this is a way of transcending biology, and it is a product of intelligence. That's how we're able to do it. The power of the brain.
Okay. But that's still a human being talking about human beings.
Yes, that's true. That's correct.
So my next question would be by Sharath. Is there any knowledge in physics beyond mathematical equations? Ideally, physics should subsume all other scientific disciplines. No, why? So our knowledge of reality should be completely mathematical. That's an interesting point, actually. I don't think physics will subsume any everything.
Well, everything breaks down to physics. Biology breaks down to biochemistry, which breaks down to chemistry, which breaks down to physics.
Hmm.
So that's so our knowledge of reality is fundamentally mathematical. But when we're talking about, you know, how the brain works, we're not necessarily doing math all the time. We're just pointing at biological phenomena that can ultimately be described mathematically if you go all the way down the ladder. Um, is there any knowledge in physics beyond mathematical equations? I mean, yes, in the sense that like you can talk about emergent properties, right? You can talk about tiers of reality that emerge from lower tiers, but the lower tiers are ultimately mathematical. I don't know. It's a very abstract question. Not really sure how to
Yeah.
answer it.
No,
Yeah.
I guess that a lot would depend on what one means by knowledge,
Hmm.
right? So uh, we can use our knowledge of mathematics to understand a lot about the universe, but the conclusions we come to will not always be mathematical. So mathematics will kind
Right.
of form the bedrock of it, and then the like it's like emergent properties, right? A greater kind of knowledge can emerge from our knowledge of mathematics. Maybe I
Hmm.
don't even know if that makes any sense, but
No, it
it's the
does.
best
Yeah.
I can do. Yeah.
When you pontificate about, phenomena and things in the universe and what may happen and who you are as an entity, you're not
Hmm.
listing mathematical equations, but your ability to do that and what you're ultimately describing on a fundamental level is math. Yeah.
Dave, have you come across any postmodernist criticisms of science and the scientific method?
I'd need an example. I'm not sure.
What Agastya asked here, to follow up on Evan's question, what do you think of the postmodernist positions like science is sexist and science is racist?
I don't like, I want to make room for that, but those statements don't make sense to me at face value.
Yeah,
Um,
they're kind of very wide. So let me ask you this. Let me give you an example. There is like what you talked about some time ago about how in response to Eman's question about evolution leading to eugenics, because
mhm.
science does not have any kind of moral foundation. It can be treated as simply, you know, these are some quantities, these are some quantities, these quantities are better than these quantities. So there was a video somewhere about how medicine vaccine testings among people of color at some point of time were done, like vaccines were tested on people of color, or rather specifically black people, and they were not informed about the side effects of those vaccines and they suffered because of it. So a lot of anti-vax sentiment coming from the black population today in America
Yeah,
is based on that discrimination.
Tuskegee experiments. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
but science isn't racist. People are racist. I mean,
Hmm.
people do racist things and sexist things, right? If you say, women are dumber than men and science says so, well, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that. I mean, you're just lying.
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah.
No, I got that. That is what you said in the answer to the previous question
Uh huh.
also. But anyway, this was fun, Dave. This was so much fun, and we
Yeah.
are at close to 1 hour. We are at 56 minutes. If you would like to, is there anything you would like to promote before we end this, apart from a
Um,
YouTube channel?
I mean, there's a channel. I have a book. Some people don't know I have a book. It's called "Is This Wi-Fi Organic? A Guide to Spotting Misleading Science Online." Um,
Do you
so
have a
check.
copy that you can show us?
I don't, because I'm actually moving to a new house tomorrow,
Oh,
and I've
okay.
already brought a lot of this stuff over there. So actually, yeah, my book of
No
promo
issues.
copies
No
that I don't know
issues.
what to do with is over there.
Great. So, everyone, please follow Dave on his YouTube channel and on his socials if you can find him on Instagram and Twitter. And thank you for all the questions that you asked, Dave. Thank you for doing this. I hope to have you here on the channel again someday to talk about similar stuff.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, I will now let people know that if you want to support this channel, there's a button at the bottom called the join button. You can click on it and become a member of the channel, or you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Vimoh. That's about it for this episode, guys. And until next time, I next time I will see you on Saturday at 9:30 p.m. Until then, please be careful and take